Hello, Wake Up New Zealand, Carol Sakey speaking. Well, we're hearing all about co-governance and, of course, the 2019 secret He Puapua report was leaked out and Cabinet had already known about it. And there's lots of saying, well, I didn't know about it, I didn't know about it. And Winston Peters said he didn't know about it. And I wouldn't be surprised he didn't know about it. We didn't know about it until it was leaked out into the public sphere. So since then, we've been hearing about co-governance and about UNDRIP. He Puapua is about entrenching the UNDRIP into New Zealand, into every aspect of New Zealand. So what is the UNDRIP? United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights, self-determination, that they have the right to their own destiny. It is co-governance. So Claire Charters, Professor of Law, Auckland University, is a key person in this. She actually is a key person in authoring He Puapua. She also has an official status at the UN to talk about the Indigenous rights of people in New Zealand. The self-determination to choose their own destiny. But however, nothing is said about the UN Charter, where all people, every human being, has the right to choose their own destiny, self-determination by virtue. And that's what the UN Declaration says. Every human being has a right to self-determine by way of their own virtue. And that is actually declared in several UN international agreements. So the United Nations Right for Indigenous People, UN Assembly, 11th of September 2007. This is when it was first introduced, but since 1982, they had been planning this, and some iwi in New Zealand had been involved in that planning. 25 years prior to the UNDRIP first being introduced in the UN Assembly. So New Zealand, under a Labour government, rejected the UNDRIP. Also Australia, Canada and the US, however, they've all actually done an about turn and they now support it. Because John Key secretly arranged with Peter Sharples, co-leader of the Maori Party, in 2010 to go and adopt the UNDRIP. There was no public consultation, it just happened. So the UN International Decade of World's Indigenous People was in 1995, and negotiations on UNDRIP started in 1982. The UN Human Rights Council actually adopted the UNDRIP in 2006. So the UNDRIP, what does it say? Well, it declares that Indigenous people around the world should have the right to develop their own political, economical, social systems or institutions, have an enjoyment of the means of substance and development, to engage freely in all their traditions, economic activities. It is co-governance. They enjoy all that and determine all that, and so it's one law for them and another for us. This is co-governance. So the UNDRP addresses individual and collective rights, cultural rights, identity, rights to education, health, employment, language and others, namely self-determination of those. So who represented New Zealand in 2007 at the UN as to speaking about the UNDRIP and why the Labour government was rejecting it? Well, that was Rosemary Banks. She did that. She was the representative for New Zealand, and she referred to 4 provisions that New Zealand couldn't agree on. And there were provisions, namely 26, 28, 19 and 32. So 26 was on land and resources, natural resources, Article 28 on redress and compensation of lands and resources, Article 19 on and 32 on veto rights of the states. That's like laws, legislations, etc. So Indigenous people, minority cultural group have the veto right over all of those. So Article 26, the provision of lands and resources, could not be implemented in New Zealand, which states that Indigenous people had a right to own, use, develop or control lands and territories they had initially owned or occupied or used. So all of that. So this is why Rosemary Banks said that the Labour Party representing New Zealand would not agree to this. This could not be done because these lands had legal ownership of Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. It would be violating property rights. So this would mean, as she said, the entire country of New Zealand would be potentially caught up with the scope of Article 26 of the Declaration. This required the recognition of lands now lawfully owned by citizens, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. It doesn't take into account customs, traditions, and land tenure systems of Indigenous people concerned. So the declaration takes no account of the fact that land might now be occupied, owned legitimately by others, or subject to numerous different overlapping Indigenous claims through the Waitangi Tribunal, and that Indigenous people have the right to veto over national resource management. She disagreed with that. Labour disagreed with that. Indigenous people have the right to veto that other groups, individuals do not have. That's what she said. And it implies different classes, a two-class society in New Zealand. Separatism. This is separatism. So she said, the declaration declares different classes of citizenship. So this is a declaration, the UNDRIP, that the Hei Puapua is determined to entrench into New Zealand. Every part, every aspect of New Zealand. So Rosemary Banks said the UNDRIP is not reflected, recognised as a general principle of law in New Zealand. Those that supported the declaration explained that the UNDRIP is an aspirational document intended to inspire rather than have legal effect. That is what Rosemary Banks said on behalf of the New Zealand government that was governed by the Labour Party. Now they have all done an about turn. So in my next episode, I will go on to talk about what actually happened from there on. This is the first stage. So in the second episode, please stay glued to this, as I would like to go through this so that you have more understanding of what is happening as to co-governance in New Zealand. And finally, I will give you the evidence in the last series, number 9, as to how iwi or tribal chiefs actually ceded sovereignty to the British Queen. How there is proof of that through the tribal chiefs themselves. Wake up, New Zealand.